Welcome to the channel and the Chicago Bears franchise, everybody. My name is MrHurriicane, and today we'll be recapping the off-season live stream for the Bears franchise. This was the first off-season of the series, and for many, this is when the series truly begins. Year one is always laying the foundation, getting to know the current team and the needs. And then once we get to attack them, the team really feels like our own. So, I'm going to recap the offseason. I know it's a pretty long video for a recap, but I like to share a lot of what happened and why it happened. And come on, I don't make bite-sized content very well. I have to have it all fleshed out like this. So going into this offseason, as we know, the Bears were 4-12 and were set to have the number 2 selection in the draft and a sizable amount of cap room. Now, there were a couple decisions to make when it came to re-signing, and for Akeem Hicks, he's actually not supposed to be on this screen. I edited his contract, but it still put him here, so what I ended up doing was just tagging him, and I'll give him his real-life contract that I had implemented in Season 1. But there was still a big re-signing that I wanted to make with Cameron Meredith, who was hurt for all of this last season, and I think he would have been an absolute game changer. Meredith 2 years ago showed a lot of potential as a starting caliber receiver, and I knew re-signing him would cost a little bit of money, but I thought it was well worth it. He denied the first offer that I gave him. For most of these other players, I was happy to move on. They were either aging veterans or players that didn't fit what I was looking for. However, I did want to keep Kendall Wright, whom I say time and time again I believe was underutilized last season. But I was also looking to maybe take this to the open free agent period where there were other receivers I had interest in. Benny Cunningham, I believe, is a solid backup to Jordan Howard, and he signed on for another 2 years. And as I said before, I think if Howard ever got hurt, Cunningham is more than ready to be a spot starter. We pull offers for Mark Sanchez, Josh Bellamy, and others, but I wanted to keep DeAndre Houston Carson because he offers exactly what I want as a backup safety, pretty good speed and tackling ability that I think Amos and Eddie Jackson lack. So I was hoping to build some safety depth that was better at run stopping. Then we get on to re-signing the staff, and it was time to make a big decision for the franchise. John Fox has been fired as head coach of the Chicago Bears. It just hasn't worked out with Fox in Chicago, and I actually fired the entire staff, even the scout and the trainer. It was also time to get on to simming the postseason games, and this was actually something to pay attention to because my last 4 franchises have correctly predicted the Super Bowl winner in real life. At the end of Season 1, it has been correct for the Super Bowl champion for 4 straight years. That's an impressive streak. We'll come back to that later. I had to find a new head coach, and Mike Tomlin was available. How can I pass up on a Super Bowl winning head coach like Mike Tomlin? So we raise the offer and say, Mike Tomlin, we want you here in Chicago. The offer is sent out. He takes some time to look at it, and as we sim, there we go. New head coach of the Chicago Bears is Mike Tomlin. Then as we get on to simming more playoff games, we are left with a Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl for the 2nd straight year. Oh, and John Fox is now coaching the Steelers, so we essentially traded head coaches. Looking at the Pro Bowl voting, Jordan Howard makes it as the 3rd running back from the AFC, or the NFC rather. We didn't have a lot of Pro Bowlers, I didn't expect a lot. Michael Burton made it, and I'm sure those 4 touchdown runs he had helped. On defense, we had Pernell McPhee become a Pro Bowler, and that's no surprise after a season with over 20 sacks. We also had Pat O'Donnell make it, so 4 players, but 2 of them were a fullback and a punter. Hopefully in the future, our team ends up with a few more Pro Bowlers than we had here in Season 1. So let's shift focus to the offseason and of course the upcoming draft. I thought this class was a little underwhelming, especially in the mid-rounds. There were definite players I liked in the first round, but we only had 1 pick there. I also knew in this offseason we had to come away with a starting caliber tackle, a starting caliber corner, and we still had to address areas like wide receiver, backup quarterback, maybe another additional tackle. building depth. So I felt like when I looked at the players that were going to be free agents, I was underwhelmed. I had a list of targets for free agency, and not many were top tier players. We're going to get to that in a moment, but basically I was hoping to find some gems in the later rounds, and I thought we uncovered some really good players with the few chances to scout we had. Now, to close out the year, the Atlanta Falcons win the Super Bowl, so we'll see if it's 5 years in a row that my franchises correctly predict the big game. Quentin Demps was our only player to retire, and he was a backup safety last year. Now on to the final re-sign period. I was still hoping to get players like Cameron Meredith back, but then toward the end of the roster where I normally start, there were some easier decisions. We bring back Alonzo Russell. We do not bring back Deontay Thompson or most of these lower rated players. We do, however, offer a 1-year deal to Ifo Ekpre-Olumu, and I've mentioned I do want to have more man cover corners in this defense. Daniel Brown I had interest in, but unfortunately he did not like the offer I gave him and wanted to test free agency. I did offer a contract to Wade Kalikipi, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Then I tried again for Kendall Wright, raised the salary a little bit, but he also ends up saying no interest in signing with us. Kyle Fuller wanted more than I was going to offer, and obviously his man coverage rating is one of his worst as a cornerback. Then for Pat O'Donnell, we let him test as well. So the top priority was, of course, getting Cameron Meredith back, and I raised the offer a couple million more than the fair offer was going to be. I raised up that signing bonus, and at the $26.5 million level, that is enough to get Cameron Meredith to agree. So that got out of the way. For Akeem Hicks, like I mentioned, just tag him, I'll fix the contract, we're going to be good to go there. Now, Zach Miller was also a free agent. I wanted him on the team. I'm just not going to give a multi-year deal to a 33-year-old tight end. So I let him test, but I had a lot of interest in bringing him back. So here were the ultimate deals that we made. We were also left with a fair amount of cap room, but I was just concerned that we wouldn't find enough starting caliber players at the positions we needed in free agency. So here were some of the retirements, including Darren Sproles, Danny Woodhead, Joe Berger, Cameron Wake, Andrew Whitworth, and then I saw the bad news that Donald Penn retired. There were 2 players I was targeting at tackle in free agency, but Donald Penn retired, so there is no chance to get him. We do go and release Mike Glennon. That contract is just too big. There is a penalty there, but we're going to move on and look for a different backup quarterback for the future anyway. So on to unrestricted free agency. The number 1 player available is Drew Brees. However, we are set with Mitchell Trubisky as our starting quarterback moving forward. I was underwhelmed by the top talent in this free agent class, but it didn't surprise me. This is ultimately what I expected. Other than Donald Penn, one of the tackles I liked was Sebastian Vollmer. Not on Penn's level in terms of skill, but I thought Vollmer would at least compete at a starting tackle job, and I knew I wouldn't have many options. I didn't like the tackle draft class very much. I felt like for the needs we had, there were so few avenues to actually address them. So I offered a contract to Sebastian Vollmer. When it came to cornerback, I couldn't find anybody I liked more than the 39-year-old Terrence Newman. I had interest in Sam Shields at 30 years old. I also liked E.J. Gaines, but I didn't think either was as good as Newman at this point. For a backup quarterback spot, what about bringing back Jay Cutler to Chicago? I didn't offer him a contract. I did, however, offer a contract to Case Keenum. I like his short accuracy, he's mobile, and the deep and medium accuracy you can work with. So I offered him a pretty low contract, but there wasn't any interest at this point. When it came to wide receiver, I thought Marquise Lee would be a good fit for us, but there was too much of a battle going on there. Thankfully, one of the players I was most excited about wasn't drawing any interest, and that was Quincy Enunwa from the Jets. I was hoping to get more physicality in our receiving core to make the tough plays we couldn't make in year 1. Meredith can make those plays, and I also think Quincy Enunwa can as well, so I was happy to offer him a contract. I also want another downfield speed threat and to run after the catch player, So Paul Richardson made a lot of sense as a target at 26 years old. 94 speed is very good. When it came to Zach Miller, again, I wanted a 1-year contract, and I was willing to make a decent offer, but there wasn't any interest, so I wasn't going to make a big offer here in the first week of free agency. With Connor Barth a free agent, I was looking at free agent kickers and decided to offer a contract to ex-Lion Matt Prater. For punter, I did offer a 2-year deal to Pat O'Donnell. As I didn't have any other great options, I did give a 1-year contract offer to Terrence Newman, but obviously he would not provide the multi-year fix that you're looking for at that position. I did want to bring Bryce Callahan back as he is a good fit for that nickel corner spot, a place where he started for a few games last year. So that's a pretty fair amount of offers to make, especially in the first wave. So simming past that, Quincy Enunwa accepts the contract, and I was really excited about that. The idea of him and Meredith potentially starting together is great, but also if Meredith were to get hurt again, Enunwa is a player who could actually back him up and provide some of the same skills that you get with a Cameron Meredith. They might not be the combo of Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall Bears fans saw years ago, but we'll see what they can develop into. So the combine grades are in for the players in the upcoming draft class, and the number 1 player on my board was A.J. Johnstone. Unfortunately, left end, defensive end in general, not a huge need for us. Running back, not a big need either. So I wasn't going to go BPA with the kind of needs that we have. You really need to address certain needs, otherwise they come back to haunt you. Time and time again, you ignore tackle, that'll come back to hurt you. You ignore pass rusher, that can hurt you too down the road. So I believe in filling your major needs and going more BPA when your team is a bit more well-rounded. There was one tackle prospect in this draft I thought could be a day 1 starter, and that was early first round prospect Frederick Chickalow. There were other tackles that I liked, like Daron Bridges and Logan Pearson, but they need a lot more development. At cornerback, there were 2 players I thought were starting caliber day 1, Jonathan Powell being my favorite of the 2, but we're talking about 3 players I liked in that first round window with 1 pick at positions that were very thin. It was not a good year to need corners and tackles, especially multiple, potentially at each position. So, as we go through, we just kind of see the players that stand out. There were some really good combine grades to take note of, like Naquan Paul from LSU in that 4.27 40. I did want to address receiver at some point, and there were a lot of first-round prospects, so I hope that one could fall a little bit and be there for us later potentially as a value. It was a great class if you were looking for physical, big receivers. They weren't really graded very highly after drafting, but they had the skills I was looking for. And Marquis Cole running 4.37 with great catch in traffic, you have to take note of that even if the full talent says undrafted. Needing pass rush depth, I was happy to find players like Lawrence Porter who were 5th round prospects that could give us exactly what we're looking for at pass rusher. Jalen Egbo from South Dakota State had an impressive combine, and with that block shed and power move combo, he became the chat's favorite player in this draft class as a 6th round talent. I still wanted to think about tight end as well. CJ Miles had a couple good catching ratings there that intrigued me. You can see we still had an offer on the table for Zach Miller, and that was the only bid so far. That was the case for a lot of these players that we offered contracts to. The Paul Richardson one actually seemed to be a pretty competitive offer. So past stage number 2. What do we see this time? Contracts accepted by Matt Prater, Paul Richardson. Back to the draft board now, finalizing things before the actual draft. There was one backup quarterback prospect I liked in this class, Andrew Leonard, in what was a very thin quarterback class with just one prospect in the first 3 rounds. I found plenty of receivers that would be options later, like Henry McClam. I found a couple safeties that were intriguing. Here is Johnny Gash from Navy with pretty good zone coverage, and I finished off scouting him in the final stage. Contracts rejected by Case Keenum and Zach Miller, but accepted by Terrence Newman. Now, Keenum actually got way more money than we offered, $8 million per year to the New York Jets. Zach Miller just took a little bit more per year to go to the Baltimore Ravens instead. It also seemed like he had no interest in a one-year offer, so ours didn't work. No really major signings here. Drew Brees ended up being the biggest free agent, of course, and we'll check on where he went here in a moment. But Case Keenum is off to New York to quarterback the Jets, it would appear. We finish off the scouting here on Johnny Gash with pretty good zone coverage and tackling. That's what I'm looking for in a backup. How about 7th round running back Rashawn Mays? You have to take notice of a great combine like that, and the skills. Then we have Drew Brees out to Kansas City, Teddy Bridgewater to Jacksonville, and in New York, it'll be Jimmy Garoppolo. Larry Fitzgerald has not retired, and now he'll be joining the Dallas Cowboys on a 2-year contract. Marquise Lee joins the Lions, so he'll be with Golden Tate and Marvin Jones, as we'll face them twice a year. The Colts now have Dante Moncrief, John Brown, and T.Y. Hilton at wide receiver. And Josh Gordon joins the Baltimore Ravens. Kendall Wright joins the Arizona Cardinals, as I did not end up offering him another contract. So on to the draft we go, indeed, picking at number 2. I knew what I wanted to do here, and the Steelers had no reason to draft the player I had targeted, and they didn't, selecting Nebraska receiver Rashad Simpson, number 1 overall. So obviously, as we need to fill major needs on this team, I felt like there was one choice to make here, otherwise it'd be a weakness for another season. And we selected Frederick Chickalow, number 2. They call it a reach, and he was number 25 in true talent. I wish he had better development, but still, great strength, great impact blocking, pass block is already pretty high. He's the type of player I was looking for at left tackle, and now we have an option for the future of this franchise. Now, we picked again, of course, at the top of the 2nd round, but I wanted to see how this 1st round would play out. Obviously, at this point, I was focused on corner. A.J. Johnstone goes number 6 to Tampa Bay. Naquan Paul, the speedy receiver, goes to Carolina. I wanted to see receivers and cornerbacks fall down the board. Sherman Poyer, my top receiver, goes 11 to the Saints. But then at 14, we see Jonathan Powell go off the board, and immediately after at number 15, we end up seeing that the 2nd cornerback I liked goes to Bernard Salisbury. Now, to trade up there would have just cost more than I was willing to pay. We had no 3rd round pick this year, and it would not have been a 4th round pick to move us from 34 to 14 to get the cornerback. It would have taken a future 2nd, 3rd round pick, some combination I was not going to spend. So, in the 2nd round, I was shocked to see that Isaac Peters was available. He is definitely not a need for us, but he is a really intriguing running back, and I had to at least consider it. At other positions, I didn't think the value was there at cornerback or receiver. So I checked out the trade offers we had. The top of the 2nd round is a pretty valuable place to trade up into, and I thought the best choice was basically to trade out completely and take a 1st round pick for next year. Because we weren't going to make a big pick to help us with this selection, why not help us out next year and get another 4th round pick to help replace the 3rd that we already had missing? So essentially, we pick at number 2 overall and don't pick again for around 90 or so picks. Isaac Peters falls to 41, where he's finally selected by the Colts. And then we get to the 4th round to finally pick again. But we had 3 4th round picks, so I felt pretty good about being able to address some of these needs. The wide receivers I liked were there. There were some mid-round cornerbacks I liked who had a man coverage emphasis in their skill set, like Bryant Powers, so there were chances to address the players now. There was also Andrew Leonard, and I was worried about him going early, being a quarterback, of course, in a very important position. So first thing I did was select Andrew Leonard at number 98 overall, and he ends up with slow development. But I like the throw power, the short accuracy, and the medium accuracy, and actually his ratings are very comparable to Mitchell Trubisky's, but Trubisky is a little bit better, and he's much more mobile. Down at 112, The players I was targeting were still available. This was the time to select the talented Marquise Cole before somebody else got this intriguing receiver out of Kansas. 4.3, 740, good bench press as well. He ends up with 92 speed, 84 catch, 88 catch in traffic. Will work on the route running, but in terms of being a red zone threat, I can't wait to see what his game is all about. And then in the 22nd pick of the 4th round, we could go in a dress corner with Bryant Powers. 87 speed, 84 man coverage. Actually, pretty similar skills there to Terrence Newman, but obviously at 22, he has time to develop his skill set further. So on to the 5th round we go, which our 5th round selection was not far from our last 4th round pick. So we had 4 picks all pretty close to each other. Now was the time to select Jalen Egbo, and this was the surprise of the draft. Number 17 in true talent, quick development, sky-high potential it looks like for Egbo, who has good block shed, good power, and excellent strength with athleticism. I cannot wait to see what type of role he gets on this defense. He will definitely be a player to watch out for. In the 6th round, how can I pass on Dante Rooks with power moves that high? Unfortunately, he doesn't have great strength and his other ratings aren't fantastic, but with a dominant trait like the power moves, I hope that he can also find a role on the team. So on to the 7th round, one more selection to make. And the safety Johnny Gash goes a couple picks before we selected. And now, I didn't think there was really room on this roster for an additional running back, but Rashawn Mays was so intriguing. I was hoping that maybe he'd go undrafted and we could still get him. There were a few players left on the board, and I decided to select Bennett Jennings. And he ends up being number 53 in true talent. Good strength, run block, and impact blocking. Pass block needs a lot of work. But in terms of building up offensive line depth and developing players, having Bennett Jennings is great. Then I thought about maybe we trade up for Rashawn Mays, which means trading up late round picks for next year. However, I did not really want to give up those selections. And at 215, the Dallas Cowboys select Rashawn Mays, and you'll see his ratings very soon. That takes us to the end of the first draft in the series. Ultimately, I think that as I've mentioned before, we didn't have a lot of ways to address our needs, and other than trading up using future draft capital, there was no way to get a starting cornerback that was young. It was a difficult offseason. Here are the ratings for Rashawn Mays, and they are very good, especially for a 7th round pick, and he has quick development, so we definitely missed out there. Pierce Agnew was a middle linebacker who went very early to the Browns, and he seems to be a very complete player. The top player on my board was A.J. Johnstone, and the ratings definitely back up him being the top player in this draft class. There weren't many good quarterbacks, however, and the Cardinals selected Peniel French, who has an awkward rating situation with lower short accuracy than medium or deep. Isaac Peters, I think, lasted too long, and he ends up at the Indianapolis Colts. And I believe they got a very good running back with exceptional route running. Strong safety Travis Grant was a great mid-round selection for the Eagles with superstar development. Johnny Gash had a skill set I would have loved to have as a backup safety with 87 speed and good zone coverage and tackle for a late round selection. The 49ers selected Vincent Brown, a superstar guard. The Giants took Seantrell Bennett as the first running back in this class, and those skills are pretty impressive. Our rivals, the Lions, took another superstar guard, Clayton Patterson, and the Panthers' Naquan Paul ends up with 96 speed and pretty good route running, but he'll have to work on the hands. Bernard Salisbury, 94 speed. The coverage does need some work, but I think the starting potential is certainly there. Sherman Poyer could be a very early contributor for the Saints a couple of years after they selected Michael Thomas. They also took Henry McClam, so they're going to have a chance to have a great, young, dynamic receiving core. Then Jonathan Powell, the top corner in this class, goes to Seattle with a very good skill set. The number 1 pick, though, was a surprise. Rashad Simpson, definitely not the best receiver in this class. So now we look ahead to the preseason, and here are some things I did after the stream was complete. We are ready to go for preseason, and I am planning to stream at least one of the preseason games tomorrow on my channel. I know many of you would like to see the team live in action and see how some of those players look in the exhibition games. I did sign Jacob Tamme to give us a veteran tight end. I wanted a run blocker anyway, and Tamme happens to have adequate speed and catching anyway, so he's a great fit for us. I also signed undrafted tight end Earl Pierce out of Yale. At outside linebacker, I had to get some more pass rushers, so we signed Carlos Romero, a 21-year-old from Florida State. We also addressed kicker. Carson Crittenden might be a perfect player to keep on the practice squad for a year. Javonte Black at corner is a player I think can develop and could be a practice squad or draft bubble type of player. Joseph Brookins is the lone rookie to make it on the team as a running back. Javonte McKinney is a right guard who will get a chance to compete for a roster spot. Chris Carson, formerly of the Seahawks, will join us for the preseason games, and I definitely like his skills a lot. Tank Boone. There are plenty of players who have a chance to make the roster as a backup safety. He and Alex Bird are two undrafted rookies with that opportunity. And finally, third quarterback on the depth chart is Texas A&M rookie Pat McChesney, who could be an option for the practice squad. So here is your projected starting lineup heading into the preseason, and we will see how the preseason battles shake out. It should be very interesting given the battles at wide receiver, and I want to see how some of these rookies play and if anybody can surprise us and take on a larger role. I have done some appearance editing and some number editing, so I know there was one player who had Walter Payton's 34, and I fixed that already. But I'll have a preseason stream tomorrow on the channel, and then I'll do a preseason recap video still, but I figure I might as well stream some of these preseason games, as I know many enjoy the practice streams for Kalispell, so this makes a lot of sense. Please leave your feedback down below. What did you think of the offseason here, the first one in the Bears franchise? Please leave a like. Those are very helpful to the series and getting more to find it and enjoy it as well. And don't forget to subscribe so you get notifications when videos go live. Hit that bell notification to take care of that. I'll see you all later. Have a great day.